What if the voice in your head isn't yours? It speaks with your tone. It uses your memories. It mimics your logic. But if you stop and really listen, it sounds more like a compilation. Your parents' warnings, society's standards, your failures, replayed like broken records. And the most disturbing part? You believe it. You trust it. You obey it. Every single day.
You walk through life holding 1,000 silent verdicts. I'm not enough. This always happens to me. People will never truly accept me. But where did these thoughts come from? You weren't born thinking this way. Negativity wasn't in your blood. It was fed to you, bit by bit, until it became your internal narrator. There's a peculiar tragedy in this. The world outside might be kind, forgiving, full of possibility. But none of it matters when your internal world is a battlefield. You sabotage your own joy before anyone else has the chance. You shrink before you've even tried. You dismiss love, success, and peace because deep down, you don't think you deserve them. Here's the paradox. The mind is the most powerful tool you'll ever have, and also the most dangerous prison you'll ever live in. It can build you or break you, often without your awareness. So ask yourself, when did you last question your thoughts instead of simply believing them? What if the real enemy is not the pain you face, but the way you process it? How many of your daily emotions are reactions to the past, masquerading as present truths? This isn't just about thinking positively. That's far too superficial. This is about unlearning, dismantling the quiet architecture of negativity that lives beneath your conscious mind. Because only when you confront the blueprint can you begin to redesign. Let's dig into the foundation. Negativity isn't random. It's not a glitch in your mind. It's the software, installed silently, updated regularly, and running in the background every moment you're awake. Carl Jung once said, "Until you make the unconscious conscious, it will direct your life, and you will call it fate." And this is precisely how negativity survives. Not through loud, violent eruptions, but through quiet obedience. You think you're making choices, but often you're just reenacting a script written by fear, shame, and doubt. From childhood, you're taught to fit in, not to understand yourself. You learn that mistakes equal failure, that vulnerability equals weakness, that success is only valid if someone else applauds it. These lessons don't come labeled as toxic. They come wrapped in approval, reward, and love withdrawal. And over time, your mind forms a belief system. I must be perfect. I must please. I must fear rejection. Negativity becomes a survival mechanism, a way to stay alert, a way to avoid pain. But what happens when the threat is no longer outside, but internalized? Schopenhauer argued that suffering is intrinsic to the human experience, that our desires, once fulfilled, are simply replaced by new ones, creating a loop of perpetual dissatisfaction. Negativity latches onto this loop, whispering, "You're still not there. You'll never be enough." The modern world amplifies it. Social media feeds it, advertising exploits it, and culture normalizes it. And then there's Nietzsche, who spoke of the slave morality, a mindset that emerges when people are conditioned to see themselves as victims of forces beyond their control. When negativity becomes your master, you stop creating, you stop acting, you react. You live not by vision, but by avoidance. not by freedom, but by fear. This is why affirmations fail, why logic can't silence anxiety. Because you're trying to repaint walls when the foundation itself is cracked. So the real question isn't, why do I think this way? It's, who built this mind I'm trapped in? And why have I never questioned its architect? Let's explore what happens when this system goes unchecked.
You don't notice the rot at first. Negativity doesn't explode, it seeps. Like water beneath floorboards, it infiltrates silently, staining everything from beneath. You still go to work, still smile in conversations, still set goals, but something underneath is decaying. A sense of heaviness, a fatigue that isn't physical, an invisible weight you carry into every room you enter. The consequences aren't always dramatic. They're subtle. You avoid opportunities, not because you're lazy, but because a voice whispers, "You'll fail." You sabotage relationships, not because you don't care, but because you think they'll leave anyway. You chase endless productivity, not from ambition, but from the deep fear of being useless. Cognitive distortions become your compass. Catastrophizing, black and white thinking, personalization. You see rejection in silence, danger in uncertainty, defeat in every delay. Your mind turns into a lens, and everything you see is filtered through fear and inadequacy. And here's the cruel irony. The brain is designed to reinforce what it already believes. It's called confirmation bias. If you believe you're not worthy, your mind will seek out evidence to prove it. Missed calls become signs of abandonment. Criticism becomes a prophecy. A compliment? Suspicious. This self-reinforcing loop deepens until you forget it's a loop at all. And society doesn't save you. It rewards the symptoms. Work harder, stay busy, be better, smile more. But no one asks why you're grinding yourself into dust. No one sees that your ambition is rooted in terror, that your kindness is self-erasure, that your silence isn't peace, it's resignation. You become functional, even admired, but internally, you're running on emotional fumes. The scariest part? You get used to it. You adapt to the numbness. You confuse comfort with healing. And slowly, without realizing it, you forget what it feels like to be free. So we must ask the next vital question, not how to cope, but how to revolt. Because this isn't a bad habit to break. This is a war you must win. And it begins with rebellion. Rebellion doesn't begin with a roar. It begins with a pause. One moment of silence. One breath where you catch the thought before it drags you under. One decision to ask, is this true? Before surrendering to the emotional current that's ruled your life for years. Breaking free isn't about silencing negativity. It's about confronting it, dragging it out of the shadows, and exposing it to light. When you watch your thoughts, instead of identifying with them, something extraordinary happens. You create space. And in that space, you discover the truth you were never taught. You are not your mind. This is the revolution. Awareness. Viktor Frankl, who survived horrors most of us cannot even imagine, wrote that between stimulus and response, there is a space. In that space lies our power to choose, and in our choice lies our growth and freedom. That space is everything. Negativity feeds on reactivity, but the moment you step back and observe, you are no longer the puppet. You become the puppeteer. And here's the counterintuitive truth. To break the cycle, you must stop fighting your mind. Yes, stop fighting. Because resistance only strengthens it. What you resist persists. What you watch without judgment dissolves. reframe the voice. When it says, "You're not enough," hear it as a glitch, not gospel. When it says, "This always ends in failure," recognize it as a script, not fate. The rebellion is in your response. Not denial, but defiance. Calm defiance. Conscious refusal to bow to a lie. Nietzsche spoke of the Übermensch, not as a brute, but as a human who creates meaning in a meaningless world. You are the author now. You decide the story your thoughts will serve. And perhaps most radical of all, practice self-compassion, not as sentimentality, but as rebellion. Because in a world that profits from your self-doubt, loving yourself is an act of revolution. The path is not easy, but it's yours. And once you've taken that first step toward inner sovereignty, you begin to sense something you haven't felt in a long time. Power. Now comes the final revelation. The truth you've always known, but never dared to say aloud.
There's a moment, subtle but seismic, when the war inside you begins to dissolve. Not because you defeated the negativity, but because you finally saw it for what it is. An echo, a survival mechanism, a ghost you've been trying to reason with. And in that moment, the deepest truth reveals itself, not as noise, but as silence. You were never broken. You were simply hypnotized. Hypnotized by stories that weren't yours. Conditioned to believe your mind was a judge, when in truth, it was just a narrator, repeating lines from a script you never wrote. But now you see it. The illusion cracks. You are not your past. You are not your fears. You are not the voice that says you can't. You are the one who hears it and chooses differently. Here lies the ultimate rebellion. You don't need to fix yourself. You need to find yourself. Beneath every layer of doubt is something ancient, something unshaken. The part of you that doesn't flinch when the world rejects you. The part of you that existed before the world told you who to be. It's not about becoming someone new. It's about remembering who you were before the world made you forget. That is the power you've been searching for. Not in books, not in gurus, not in approval. It was always yours. So the question is no longer, how do I stop the negativity? The question is, when will I rise? Now, if you're ready to stop surviving and start commanding your life, subscribe. Not just to this channel. Subscribe to your mind. Subscribe to your power. Subscribe to your fate. And if you're ready to claim that identity, type it. Not for me, for you. Say it out loud in the comments. I am the architect of my mind, the king of my fate. Say it and mean it, because the world needs to hear your echo now.